Hello, welcome to another video. Please like, share and subscribe for more amazing story. True God in Another Worlds, Tensura x Tbate, by Tempest_King_20. Chapter 60 Nocturnal Confrontation Arthur Lewin Pav. I tried to focus on Gideon's droning voice as he explained the intricacies of artifact components, but my mind kept wandering. The wooden chair creaked as I shifted, attempting to find a comfortable position. Suddenly, I felt a light tap on my shoulder. Emily, her thick glasses slightly askew, leaning in close. Her wild green curls tickled my ear as she whispered, "Psst. I heard you're going to be a professor for a new class." My eyes broadened in surprise, a jolt of excitement ran through me. "What? Where'd you hear that?" I began to whisper back, but was suddenly cut off by a sharp whoosh. A piece of chalk zoomed past my nose, leaving a trail of white dust in the air before disappearing into Emily's mess of curls with a soft poof. Gideon stood at the front of the class, his arms still outstretched from the throw. His weathered face, lined with years of magical study, bore a mixture of annoyance and fatigue. The class had fallen silent, all eyes on us. "Miss Watskin," he said, his voice carrying a hint of exasperation, "since you seem so eager to chat, perhaps you'd like to enlighten the class on the various components in a basic light-producing artifact?" Emily straightened up, unfazed by the chalk assault. Her yellow eyes sparkled with enthusiasm behind her glasses. "The basic light-producing artifact is made up of the basic foundation crystal, fluoronite," she began confidently. "It's found abundantly near the outskirts of Sapin and also in the kingdom of Darv. After fluoronite is refined, it will constantly let out a dim light to control the output of the ore." Gideon's voice cut through Emily's lecture, his bushy eyebrows furrowing. Okay, that's enough," he grumbled, waving his hand dismissively. "I just asked for the basic material, not a full technical breakdown. Moving on." Giving a light shrug, Emily retrieved her notebook and pen. I watched, amused, as she made futile attempts to locate the errant piece of chalk buried deep in her unruly hair. As the class finally ended and we packed up our things, I flexed my stiff hand, cramped from taking notes. "Damn that geezer, already assigning us a project," I cursed under my breath. For homework, we were tasked with assembling a light-producing artifact, or LPA for short. The hallways buzzed with activity as students rushed to their next classes or the cafeteria. The stone walls echoed with footsteps and chatter, the air thick with the scent of magic and adolescence. My critical thinking abilities and vague knowledge of technology from my past allowed me to make connections and understand better than most first years, but I could hear everyone grumbling about how this class was one of their hardest. Leave it to that eccentric Gideon to teach a basic class as if it were several levels higher. The bustling cafeteria hit us with a wall of noise as we entered, a cacophony of clattering trays, animated chatter, and the occasional burst of laughter. Rimuru, Emily, and I weaved through the crowd, dodging elbows and backpacks. The aroma of today's specials wafted through the air, a mix of savory herbs and something that might have been lasagna, mingling with the scent of freshly baked bread. Rimuru grabbed a tray, his eyes lit up as he surveyed the spread before him, reminding me of a kid in a candy store. He started loading up his plate with a grin, his eyes twinkling mischievously. "Looks like you've got your work cut out for you with this LPA project, huh?" he teased, waving his fork at me like a tiny sword. "I already have a couple LPAs I made lying around in my dorm anyway," Emily said casually, as if discussing the weather. Her wild green curls bounced as she reached for a bowl of fruit salad, the fresh scent of citrus rising from the colorful mix. I shook my head in amazement, fumbling with my own tray as I tried to snag the last piece of garlic bread. The warmth of the bread seeped through my fingers, and the rich aroma made my mouth water. "Wow. You could probably ace this class in your sleep. How do you find the time to make all this stuff?" Emily's cheeks flushed slightly, a rosy hue spreading across her freckled skin. She shrugged, suddenly finding the pile of vibrant green beans on her plate fascinating. "I just like tinkering, I guess," she mumbled, pushing her glasses up her nose with her knuckle. "You can have one if you want." I couldn't help but grin as I turned towards Emily dramatically, batting my eyelashes in an exaggerated show of gratitude. The fluorescent lights above cast a halo around her messy curls. "Really? You're a lifesaver, you know that?" I crooned, my voice dripping with over-the-top sweetness. Before I could really get into my performance, Rimuru's hand connected with the back of my head with a solid thwack. The sound echoed in my ears, momentarily drowning out the cafeteria noise. Ow! I yelped, nearly dropping my tray. The sting was sharper than I expected, spreading across my scalp like a small fire. I rubbed the spot, giving Rimuru a wounded look. What was that for? Rimuru's expression was a mix of exasperation and amusement, his eyebrows raised and lips twitching as if fighting a smile. Do your own thing, he scolded, his voice gruff but not unkind. He turned to Emily, his tone softening. And Emily, don't spoil him so much. The sideways glance he shot me was part stern, part playful, his eyes glinting with mischief. But she was the one who offered, I protested, still nursing my injured head. The smell of lasagna wafted up from my tray, reminding me of my growling stomach despite the drama. Emily tried to hide her giggle behind her hand, but her eyes crinkled with mirth. The sound of her laughter was like tinkling bells, light and airy. Despite my smarting scalp, I found myself grinning too, infected by her amusement. Come on, you two, Emily said, her voice warm with affection. She gestured towards the sea of tables with her free hand. Let's go find a table before they're all taken. We navigated through the maze of tables, the chatter and clinking of cutlery creating a familiar cafeteria symphony. Finally, we spotted an empty table near a large arched window. As we settled in, sunlight streamed through the glass, catching the dust motes in the air and giving the scene an almost dreamy quality. The warmth of the sun on my face was a welcome contrast to the cool air of the cafeteria. I noticed Emily still fussing with her hair, her brow furrowed in concentration. Her wild curls seemed to have a life of their own, bouncing and swaying with each movement. You still got that chalk in there? I asked, trying to keep a straight face but feeling the corners of my mouth twitch upwards. She let out a groan that was part frustration, part embarrassment. I think so, she sighed, her fingers tangling in her locks. I just can't seem to find it. It's like it's playing hide and seek with me. Rimuru leaned in, his gold eyes carefully examining the tangled mess of Emily's curly brown locks. Hold still, he murmured, his voice soft and focused. He reached out, his fingers gently parting her hair. After a moment of patient searching, he triumphantly extracted the elusive piece of chalk, holding it up like a trophy. Got it, he announced with a smile. Oh, thank you. Emily breathed, her cheeks flushing a light pink. She quickly smoothed down her hair, looking both relieved and a bit flustered. As we dug into our meals, the clinking of utensils punctuating our conversation, I steered us back to the topic at hand. The rich aroma of my lasagna wafted up, making my mouth water. So, I said, trying to talk around a mouthful of cheesy goodness, any ideas on how you guys want to approach this LPA thing? Rimuru shrugged, the picture of nonchalance as he took a sip of his drink. The ice cubes clinked against the glass as he set it down. I already finished mine, he revealed, his tone casual but with a hint of satisfaction. I had some free time so I made some with Emily. I raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised. The fork in my hand paused halfway to my mouth. You guys made some together? Rimuru nodded, his fork gesturing between himself and Emily. A piece of lettuce dangled precariously from the tines. Yeah, we had a study session last week and ended up working on some LPAs together. It was a good way to kill two birds with one stone. Emily nodded enthusiastically, her earlier shyness seemingly forgotten. Her eyes sparkled with excitement behind her glasses. Yeah, it was really helpful to bounce ideas off each other. We came up with some pretty creative designs. Well, I didn't do anything but suggest a few things, Rimuru interjected, flashing a warm smile at Emily. The sunlight caught his blue hair, giving it a shimmering glow that seemed to dance in the light. Emily was the one who really brought everything together. She has a knack for thinking outside the box and injecting innovation into the project. Emily's blush deepened at the praise, the color spreading to the tips of her ears. She ducked her head, suddenly very interested in arranging her peas into neat rows on her plate. The soft clink of her fork against the ceramic filled the momentary silence. Seeking to change the subject, Emily looked up, curiosity bright in her eyes. She pushed her glasses up her nose, leaving a small smudge that caught the light. By the way, you two didn't explain to me how you became professors, she said, her gaze moving between Rimuru and me expectantly. I exchanged a knowing glance with Rimuru, a small smile playing on my lips. Leaning back in my chair, I felt the worn leather cushion sink slightly under my weight, the familiar creak of the wood beneath it echoing in the bustling cafeteria. Well, I began, my voice tinged with amusement, it's kind of a funny story, actually. Rimuru nodded, his usually calm expression cracking slightly to reveal a flash of annoyance. Yeah, if by funny you mean completely unexpected and slightly annoying, he added, rolling his eyes. His fingers drummed a restless rhythm on the tabletop, betraying his lingering frustration. Emily's interest was palpable as she leaned in closer, her wild curls bouncing with the movement. Her eyes, magnified slightly by her thick glasses, were wide with anticipation. Oh, do tell, I'm all ears, she exclaimed, pushing her half-eaten lunch to the side. I chuckled, running a hand through my hair as I recalled the events that led to our current positions. The memory of Director Goodski's office, with its imposing mahogany desk and walls lined with ancient tomes, flashed through my mind. A few days back, Director Goodski summoned us to her office. She made us an offer to become full professors, citing a need for our unique talents. Casting a sidelong glance at Rimuru, I added, despite Ri's initial reservations, we eventually agreed. I watched as Rimuru's expression softened slightly, remembering our lengthy discussions and debates over the pros and cons of accepting the offer. It was quite the surprise, to be honest. I never expected to be offered a position as a full professor so soon after starting as a student. Ri continued, recalling the moment Director Goodski had shared her vision for our roles at the academy. It's been a whirlwind, that's for sure, I added with a wry smile, thinking of the mountain of paperwork that now cluttered my desk. Dealing with the administrative side of things has its own set of challenges. Emily's eyes widened in surprise, her mouth forming a small, "Oh, that's incredible," she breathed, her voice filled with awe. You both are really talented. I can see why Director Goodski would want to make use of your skills. And I wished she didn't do that, Rimuru interjected with a heavy sigh, his frustration evident in the set of his shoulders and the tightness around his eyes. It's annoying dealing with all the stuff that comes with that, especially the teachers who were objecting to it with some of the students' parents. The words came out in a rush, as if he'd been holding them back for a while, his usual composure cracking under the weight of recent events. Emily's expression softened, her earlier excitement melting into a look of genuine sympathy. Her hand hovered uncertainly for a moment before gently patting Rimuru's arm. The touch was light, almost hesitant, as if she wasn't quite sure how to offer comfort to her friend. Oh, I can imagine, she said, her voice gentle. That must be tough to deal with. I offered Emily a reassuring smile, hoping to ease her worry. It has been a bit of a challenge, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. But we're managing. Hopefully things will settle down once everyone gets used to the idea of us being professors. I paused, chuckling softly. Though I have to admit, it's still a bit strange for me too. Emily's gaze flicked between us, a small, understanding smile playing on her lips. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. I see. You know, most of us are really excited to have you as teachers. It's just, change can be hard sometimes, right? Absolutely, I agreed, feeling a surge of gratitude for her understanding. Emily's eyes lit up with curiosity. By the way, what exactly are you going to teach? I've heard rumors, but, she trailed off, leaving the question hanging in the air. Rimuru was the first to answer. I'll be continuing with the mana manipulation class. I nodded, then added, and I'll be teaching the individual combat class for the lower division. Emily's eyebrows shot up. Oh, new class? She asked, leaning in even closer, her curiosity practically palpable. I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. Yes, it's a new class that I proposed to Director Goodski, I explained, my own excitement bubbling up as I spoke. I thought it would be beneficial for students to have a more focused approach to individual combat techniques, especially for those who might not excel in group combat settings. As I spoke, I could see the gears turning in Emily's head, her eyes sparkling with interest. That's really cool, she exclaimed, her voice filled with genuine admiration. I bet a lot of students will benefit from that. I hope so, I replied. As the sun continued its descent, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink, we lost ourselves in conversation. The night air nipped at my skin, carrying the crisp scent of fallen leaves and distant pine. I stood alone on the sprawling academy grounds, my eyes drawn to the vast canvas of stars above. The moon, a luminous pearl in the inky sky, bathed the landscape in an ethereal glow, casting long, shifting shadows across the manicured lawns. "Tonight is really beautiful and quiet," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. A mix of contentment and calm swirled in my chest as I continued. "It's been several days since nothing has happened to me. I actually feel like something is wrong." Reaching into my pocket, my fingers hovering over the buttons of my communication device as I considered summoning the other disciplinary committee officers. Ree's words from earlier echoed in my mind, and I couldn't help but let out a soft, self-deprecating chuckle. Maybe Ree's right, I mused, running a hand through my hair. I bring trouble wherever I go. I guess I've gotten so used to chaos that when things are quiet, it feels wrong. The tranquil moment shattered as a familiar, grating voice cut through the night. "What are you even talking about?" I turned to see Ravenpour sauntering towards me, his usual posse in tow. The moonlight glinted off his perfectly coiffed hair, and his designer uniform seemed to shimmer, a stark contrast to the shadows around us. The smug smirk plastered on his face made my stomach churn with annoyance. Taking a deep breath to center myself, I met his gaze coolly. "I wonder about that," I replied, my tone deliberately casual despite the irritation bubbling beneath the surface. "Anyway, what brings you out of your dorm this late? Don't you know it's curfew now?" Ravenpour's smirk widened, his eyes glinting with defiance. "Curfew, schmurfew," he drawled, voice dripping with disdain. "I do what I want, whenever I want." His followers snickered in unison, like a well-rehearsed chorus. I felt my patience wearing thin, a spark of anger igniting in my chest. Raising an eyebrow, I challenged, "You have the audacity to say that in front of a disciplinary committee officer?" Ravenpour took a step closer, his arrogance palpable in the night air. "And what can you do, commoner?" he taunted, his voice low and mocking. "As a member of the disciplinary committee," I began, my voice steady and authoritative, "I have the responsibility to enforce the rules and ensure all students abide by them." I locked eyes with Ravenpour, noticing a flicker of uncertainty behind his arrogant facade. "So, unless you want to face the consequences, I strongly suggest you heed the curfew and return to your dormitory." The air between us crackled with tension. Ravenpour's smirk wavered, his earlier confidence slowly eroding. His followers shifted uneasily, exchanging nervous glances. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "If you refuse to comply," I continued, my tone gaining an edge of steel, "I'll have no choice but to use force. If that's what it takes to uphold order at this academy, then so be it." As I spoke, I allowed a fraction of my power to seep out. The air grew heavy, and the leaves on nearby trees rustled ominously despite the lack of wind. A faint, ethereal glow seemed to emanate from my body, barely visible in the moonlight. Ravenpour's smirk completely vanished, replaced by a look of genuine concern. He swallowed hard, his composure cracking. His followers took a step back, their earlier bravado evaporating like morning dew. I advanced a step, my gaze never leaving Ravenpour's face. "Do yourself a favor and avoid unnecessary trouble," I advised, my voice softer but intense. "It's in your best interest to follow the rules like everyone else." The tense silence was shattered by an unexpected shout, "So SS Suli." One of Ravenpour's followers stepped forward, his face contorted with rage. The sudden outburst startled me, breaking my concentration. "I bet you used your power to threaten Princess K. Kathy Ln," he accused, his stutter more pronounced with each word. Confusion washed over me like a cold wave. I blinked, trying to process his words. "Huh?" I managed, my mind scrambling to understand the accusation. The student's face flushed a deep crimson, veins pulsing in his forehead. "Don't act dumb," he shouted, advancing towards me with clenched fists. The raw emotion in his voice was palpable, filling the night air. "I will save the princess, my princess." I felt a mixture of bewilderment and concern. This guy clearly believed what he was saying, but it was so far from reality. I tried to keep my voice calm and steady as I responded, "Your princess? I'm not sure what you're implying. I have no intention of threatening anyone, least of all Princess Kathleen." I noticed Ravenpour's eyes widen with surprise at his follower's outburst. "Hey, calm down," Ravenpour called out, his voice tinged with nervousness and a hint of fear. But his words fell on deaf ears. The follower's eyes were wild, filled with a fanatical gleam that reflected the moonlight. I could sense the misguided devotion radiating from him as he declared, I will protect the princess from anyone who dares to harm her, even if it means facing the disciplinary committee. Ravenpour's face fell, the color draining from his cheeks as he realized he'd lost control of the situation. With a resigned sigh, he muttered, "TCH, I have nothing to do with what you do." He turned and left with his other followers, their footsteps quick and hurried on the grass, leaving me alone with the enraged student. Time seemed to stretch like taffy as I watched the student's fist become encased in rough, jagged stones. The moonlight glinted off the crystalline edges, casting eerie shadows across his face. His eyes, locked onto mine, burned with an intensity. In that heart-stopping moment, I knew reasoning was no longer an option. The air around us grew thick and heavy with tension, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. I could almost taste the metallic tang of impending violence on my tongue as I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation. My body reacted on pure instinct, muscle memory kicking in before my brain could fully process the danger. I pivoted sharply to the side, my uniform rustling with the sudden movement. The whoosh of air as his stone-covered fist whistled past my ear was deafening, and I felt the barest graze of rock against my cheek. The ground beneath us shuddered as his attack connected with the cobblestones, sending chips of stone flying like shrapnel. The sharp crack of breaking rock echoed across the otherwise silent academy grounds. "Calm down," I said, but I could see my words weren't reaching him. His face was contorted with rage, lost in his own delusions. As he wound up for another attack, I quickly activated my protective barrier. The air shimmered around me as the invisible shield sprang to life. The student unleashed a barrage of stones, each one bouncing off my barrier with a dull thud. The impacts sent vibrations through my body, but I stood my ground. I clicked my tongue in frustration, the sound sharp in the night air. This had gone on long enough. As the student lunged at me again, time seemed to slow. I made a split-second decision, focusing my energy and manipulating the gravity around him. The air rippled visibly as my power took effect, distorting the moonlight. With a swift motion, I redirected his momentum, amplifying it. The student's eyes widened in surprise, fear replacing rage as he found himself moving faster than he intended. Before he could react, my enhanced force sent him crashing to the ground. The impact echoed across the courtyard, a dull thud followed by the clatter of loose stones. Dust billowed up around his now still form. As the dust settled, I heard familiar footsteps approaching. The sound echoed off the surrounding walls, breaking the eerie silence that had descended after the fight. My shoulders relaxed slightly at the familiar cadence. "Looks like you've got things under control," a familiar voice called out, breaking the eerie silence. I turned to see Ree and Claire emerging from the shadows, their figures gradually coming into focus as they stepped into the warm circle of lamplight. "You're late," I said, unable to keep the mix of relief and exasperation from my voice. Ree's eyes flickered with apology as he ran a hand through his tousled hair. "We had to deal with some students," he explained, his voice tinged with weariness. "What happened here?" I took a deep breath, the crisp night air filling my lungs as I collected my thoughts. The scent of damp earth and something faintly metallic, residual magic, perhaps, hung in the air. Ravenpour decided to test the boundaries of curfew. As usual, I began, gesturing towards the shadows where I knew the troublemaker had disappeared. "His follower here," I nodded towards the unconscious student at my feet, became agitated and attacked me. He seemed to believe I was some sort of threat to Princess Kathleen. Claire knelt beside the fallen student, her keen eyes scanning his form. Her fingers, nimble despite the night's chill, carefully lifted his shirt. A sharp intake of breath broke the silence. "He's another one, Captain," she said, her voice a mix of disappointment and concern. I leaned in, curiosity overriding my fatigue. In the pale moonlight filtering through the trees, I could see what had caught Claire's attention. Intricate runes were etched into the student's back, glowing faintly with an otherworldly red light. They pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, sending shivers down my spine. Ree's shoulders slumped as he sighed heavily, the weight of the revelation settling upon him like a physical burden. "I had a feeling this might be the case," he admitted, rubbing his forehead wearily. The shadows under his eyes seemed to deepen. "These runes. They're trouble." "Another one?" I echoed, my mind racing with implications. Ree nodded grimly, his expression serious in the shadowy light. "There was a previous incident with a group of students who bore similar runes. They turned violent and attacked Lloyd and the others in the eastern wing last week, he explained. Apparently, these runes raise the person's core stage, and increase their mana reserves as well. You sensed that, didn't you? I nodded, recalling the moment just before the student had attacked. Now that I remember it, I felt him leak some mana before he went on a rampage. It was unnaturally potent. Like nothing I've ever felt before. It seems we have a deeper problem on our hands than just unruly students breaking curfew, Claire said, rising to her feet. Her gray eyes scanned the shadows around us, alert and wary. The wind picked up, rustling through the leaves and causing the lamplight to flicker ominously. If these runes are being used to enhance students' abilities and manipulate them into violence, we need to find out who's behind it and put a stop to it. You're right, Ri agreed, his voice low and determined. He straightened up, squaring his shoulders as if preparing for a fight. We need to report this to the director immediately. But first, he glanced at the unconscious student, we need to get him to the infirmary. Those runes. They're not just dangerous to others. They're hurting the students they're on, too. As if on cue, the runes on the student's back flared brightly for a moment, causing him to groan in pain even in his unconscious state. The air around us seemed to thicken with magical energy, making it harder to breathe. This is bigger than we thought, I murmured. Someone's playing a dangerous game with our students' lives, and we need to find out who, before it's too late.